love to talk about how, before we met each other, how the Lord brought us together. And first of all, you were converted to the church before I was. How did that happen?
Well, I graduated from high school and then decided to go to Citrus Junior College for the beginning of my college work. And a couple of the fellows from high school that I knew also decided to go out to Citrus Junior College rather than Pasadena City College. It was smaller and a little more intimate. And as I was riding out to Citrus Junior College with them, I discovered that they had been on something they called a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And being a curious child like I was, I asked them questions. And being returned missionaries, they were able to answer the questions to my satisfaction. In fact, they did such a good job, I joined the church.
Well, there were a couple of other things that you liked about the church. One was the dances with the pretty girls.
That is true. I love the dances. I like dancing.
Yes.
Oh yeah, going to the dances, and I was impressed with the fact that while we were in dancing, some of the parents were in the chapel on the floor sewing the rug together, and I was really impressed with the fact that they were able to do that kind of work. And I was also impressed with the bishop, who was a manly man, and I had some maybe warped opinions, but it seemed to me that many of the ministers of the churches were kind of wimpy, but the bishop of this Latter-day Saint group was a real man. And I was impressed that when he bore his testimony, he got tears in his eyes, and I thought, wow.
I'm being 10 years younger than you, so you must have been 21, 22. And when I joined the church, I was 1 month before my 12th birthday. And how I came to know the church was my parents and my big sister and I had moved to Corpus Christi from New Jersey, where I was born. And Mom couldn't be without her parents and her big sister. And so we moved down there, and we were struggling financially. So my mom put an ad in the paper for a single woman, not a man, of course, she has 2 daughters at home, but a single woman to rent the spare room out in the back. And 2 lovely young ladies showed up. And in those days, they were called the lady missionaries instead of the sister missionaries. And they moved in to the back room, and they were just lovely. And we only had 1 bathroom between us all. And my mom just adored these girls. And so in the evening, after they'd spent a day of tracting, they would get their pajamas on, and then I'd get my pajamas on, and I'd go back, and they would practice they were called cottage meetings back then, but they're called, what are they called? Discussions. They're called the discussions. And so they practiced on me, and I couldn't believe how what they were saying made sense. And of course, I loved the church my sister was taking me to, the St. Mark's Lutheran, but I never could understand this triune God, how there was one God, but there were 3, but they were really one. And when the sister missionaries explained to me that there are actually 3 separate beings, it just clicked with me and made sense. So I was actually baptized on my dad's birthday, February the 12th, 1951. And you never should ever underestimate a 12-year-old to understand and to have a burning testimony, because I certainly did.
Yeah, I joined the church just prior to my 21st birthday.
I know, in March. So we were about 10 years apart there. Yeah, that's how I know the Lord was bringing us together.
I was down in Corpus Christi because that was part of the Navy flight program. Basic training was in Pensacola, Florida, and I finished that and went down to Corpus Christi, where we did all-weather flying, and where we started flying operational aircraft.
So I was not in Corpus Christi when you got there. So the Lord really had to work hard to get us together.
Well, all I remember is that I was in, one night we had an activity in the church called Mutual.
In Corpus Christi.
And so I was attending Mutual when this really attractive young lady walked by. and I was hooked.
Well, when you first got there, I was not in town. I was away. But leading up to your joining the Navy, you had already had college. So we're already up to 1955 when we met, and you had gone to Redlands.
Oh yeah, I graduated from the University of Redlands
in California. And didn't you have some postgraduate work at SC?
Yes.
Okay. And then why did you decide to join the Navy?
Because the Army wanted to draft me.
That's a good reason.
And I said, thank you, but no thank you. I would rather be aboard ship than on the hot ground.
Well, yeah, I don't blame you for that. Okay, so how did I get back home? I left in the first place in February of '55 because I tried out for Horace Heidt, which was a big band and a family variety show that was traveling across the United States. And they had tryouts, and I went to the tryout and I made it. And he had 10 showgirls, dancers and singers, and once a week he would film a television show. So my mom let me go, and they had a tutor, and we had a chaperone. I was able to finish the 10th grade while we were on the road, and met many famous people. But we went through the whole United States and ended back in California at Horace Height's. They called it a ranch, but it was where the whole show stayed, the band and everyone. And at some point, my mother was needing a serious operation on her eyes, and they were going to take one of her eyes out. And I was frightened, and so Mr. Height paid for a ticket for me to go back. And I was so happy to see my family and to make it to church, and that week was Mutual, and I couldn't wait to get back to the little branch because they had given me a Book of Mormon with my own name printed on gold, and they felt quite involved with my career. So I went to church, and who was there was ta-da, and you were an ensign or Lieutenant JG?
I think I was a JG.
And there weren't many eligible Latter-day Saint boys down there, and so our branch president's wife came over to Ensign Griggs and said, "Say, we have a young lady here that needs a ride home." And she was definitely looking for a husband for me.
And so we have the fox in the hen house.
And so we remember how much crazy we were for each other. We didn't go straight home. We drove around and then we sat and talked. And we always sat watching the submarines, as they say, at the Corpus Christi Bay. But you were such a gentleman. I thought, well, maybe he doesn't like me, and we're on our 5th date. Well, I don't know why he won't give me a little kiss goodnight. And so I kind of pushed it a little bit and was rather forward and found out that I really liked that. So
yeah, me too.
Well, the neighbors were talking because I'm 16 and my mother is letting me go out with a 26-year-old man. Little did they know that I was as safe as I could be, no matter about the fox in the hen house. Especially you were so reluctant to even give me a kiss.
I was trying to be a gentleman.
You were a gentleman. And I don't know if we want our posterity to hear this, but even after we became engaged, I tried to talk you into going down to Mexico for a quickie marriage, and you took me by the shoulders and held me at arm's length and said, no, we're going to the temple. I remember sitting in the car and just talking about our life together, and we actually talked about going on a mission. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. We really did talk about going on a mission before we were even married.
Yeah, get those kids.
Corpus Christi is on the bay there, so we could sit and look out over the bay and talk, and we did. And we went on several dates, and I do remember not kissing her and doing it on purpose because I wanted to make sure that we were doing it right.
Yeah.
I really liked her.
Well,
she got my attention.
Yeah, I think getting acquainted, really knowing each other is so important in a relationship, and also not sexualizing our relationship by starting with the kissing, but to know each other. I mean, you told me about your childhood and the difficulties that you had growing up with a single mom and not at that time knowing who your dad was, and I told you about my childhood, and my dad, did a lot of drinking, and how my mom worked, baked cookies to sell to the neighbors to earn money for my dancing lessons, and then we talked about our likes and dislikes, and I think at one point we even talked about getting a big dog, which we never did. We were going to get one of those big old, I don't know what you call them, but
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we thought that would be, that was on our honeymoon, driving back across country. We thought that would be fun, but
yeah, that was, we got married and we had to drive back to Corpus Christi so she could finish up high school, and then I drove on to
Great Lakes.
Yeah. We have to understand that eventually I dropped out of the Navy flight program. During the time I was down in Corpus Christi, I spent all my free time over at her place, getting to know her better. But I did drop out of the flight program, and so they sent me to gunnery officer school in San Diego. And then after I finished that, then they assigned me to be a gunnery officer on a seaplane tender. And so she was in Corpus Christi and I was in Westpac. It's what we call Western Pacific. And so did a tour out in Westpac, came back, and then I got a little leave and drove down to Corpus Christi so I could see this really attractive girl that I met.
Well, that summer, in August of 1955, we were so enamored with each other that, when you weren't flying, you were over at my house, or we were driving around somewhere, or sitting in the car watching the submarine races, so they say, at Corpus Christi Bay. Just warm summer night, the breeze is blowing, and we are talking our heads off, just talk, talk, talk. And I think we really got to know each other. So you might say, well, maybe we were only together for maybe a couple of months. We made the most of that time to get to know each other, our likes and our dislikes, and how we wanted our life to turn out. And I'd started the 11th grade. I was a junior now, and I had algebra. And I have always had trouble with numbers. And so when we weren't talking about our life together, you were tutoring me in math and helped me. I did very well that semester.
Well, that's what I was. I was a teacher.
So you went overseas. Oh, let's see. You went overseas. When did we get? No, that's right. We were not engaged yet in '56, and you went to the West Pacific. You went to Hong Kong, Okinawa, and you were the gunnery officer on board the what?
USS Kenneth Whiting,
And it was
which is a seaplane tender.
A seaplane tender. Yeah. And then that summer, and I think it was about the 3rd or 4th of August, you drove all the way back to Corpus Christi. And we drove over and sat in the car innocently, looking out at Corpus Christi Bay, and you turned to me like this, and you said, Diane, Priscilla Rogers, and I knew what was coming, and I was really excited. You said, will you marry me?
Yes, I did.
And then my nose itched. My nose always itches at a time like that. And I said, yes, I will. And we went to Zales Jewelers, and we got this diamond. And I was an engaged 11th grader, and very proud. Okay, so were you in Bremerton? Were you in 1957 before we were married in May? April, were you up in Bremerton, Washington on your ship? You were in between being transferred from the ship to the Great Lakes.
That's right.
Naval Training Center.
And that gave us an excuse. So I came down to the LA Temple, and you flew out to the LA Temple.
Well, and you were insistent we were going to be married in a temple, and in 1957 I think you could count the temples on one hand, and there was between California and Texas there was one in Mesa, Arizona, but it was closed for cleaning or something. Maintenance, yes. And so first I flew to Houston to the church patriarch, and I got my patriarchal blessing, which I do want to talk about later, how our patriarchal blessings had similar things to say, and was a telling about how our future was going to happen, which we didn't understand at the time. But anyway, I'm in Houston. I kissed my mom goodbye. She's crying because she couldn't go to the temple because she wasn't ready. She was a member, but she wasn't ready. And so I'm all alone. 5 weeks past my 18th birthday, and I get on a plane. I'm flying to LA, and those were the days when you could walk out on the tarmac and greet your visitors as they deplaned. But I'm up at 30,000 feet, and I'm going, what am I doing? I want to marry this guy forever. I mean, we're going to be together forever and ever. And what if I don't like him after 75 years? And then I looked out the window and I said, I can't remember what he looks like. Here I am with my wedding ring.
How can you forget this face?
I mean, with my engagement ring and my whole wardrobe out of my closet. And then the plane landed and you started to walk up on the tarmac, and I looked out and I go, oh yeah, I am crazy about this guy and I want him forever.
Lucky me.
And so we did spend the night in a hotel across the street from the temple in separate rooms. You showed me my little wedding ring, and I showed you your wedding ring, which I had it made with gold and silver, so you could always have any color watch that you wanted. And then we went the next day together to go through the LA temple.
And an interesting thing happened. We went into the temple to get married, and they wouldn't accept my
They couldn't
medical form
from the Navy.
that the Navy had given me. So we stopped, went out and found the doctor, and got a form signed, and came back. And President Bowering and his wife and the people that were working in the temple kept the temple open just for us.
Yeah,
so we felt really important.
That was very special, especially since I had known President Bowering, Benjamin Bowering, and his wife from when I joined the church at age 12, 11, turning 12, because he had been the president of the Gulf States Mission, and so they knew me very well.
So then we got married, and then we started driving.
No. We got a note. Somebody sent us a note in the temple about a luncheon.
Oh, well, yeah. The mission president and his wife, she baked the cake, and we had a luncheon there at her place before we took off on our trip down.
Oh, this was your bishop. Bishop Van Alsten of the Westwood Ward, because you had attended that ward.
Yeah, I was going to the University of Southern California for graduate work, but I was attending the Westwood Ward, which is actually closer to UCLA. But anyhow, we did all that, and then started driving down to Corpus Christi, so we could get her back to finish high school. And we got her down to Corpus Christi, and I took off and drove to the Chicago area.
Right.
Yeah, the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, because I finished my 1.5 years of naval duty in the Chicago area.
Well, I want to feel
and she eventually, she graduated from high school and then took a train, and we got together in Great Lakes.
Well, I want to fill in some of the blanks, because being a girl, your bishop and his wife not only had a little wedding cake for us, the table was set beautifully with china and crystal, but they had a white orchid for me. And I just thought, there are some really good people in this world. Like a couple of orphan kids like us who were all alone, except I think you had one or two of your good friends. Marshall Working was one, and there was someone named Jim, not you, but a friend, and they were there, and I just thought, it was a real wedding day, really special. But we also stopped in Monrovia to see your adopted family, and they were, greeted us and were very happy, and your adopted sister Betty came out, and we had a nice little visit, and then I think we had to stop in
Palm Springs?
Yeah, Palm Springs, and then we drove all the way across the California desert, the New Mexico desert, and then the Texas desert.
Drove through part of southwestern Texas, where there's more and more of less and less than any place in the world.